and welcome to the lecture series on Introduction to Indian Philosophy. Today we will discuss the Vaibhāṣika and the Sautrāntika schools of Buddhism. Now here we have some interesting and philosophical stuff to discuss. There is a close link between the Theravada, the Vaibhāṣika and the Sautrāntika schools of Buddhism. Now what is this connection? You all know that in the 3rd century BCE, Theravada split into two, Haimavatas and Sarvastivada. Some believe that Vaibhāṣikas were the continuators of the Sarvastivada school. Others say that Vaibhāṣika is just another name for Sarvastivada. Still others are of the opinion that Sarvastivada is a branch of the Vaibhāṣika school. And there are also other scholars who believe that Sarvastivada was later divided into two schools, namely Vaibhāṣika and Sautrāntika. Yet, some scholars believe Sautrāntika to be a branch of Theravada. Whatever the case may be, we know for sure that Theravada tradition is known to adhere strictly to the original teachings of the Buddha. But there was a conflict between the Theravada and the Sarvastivada school which flourished in Kashmir during the reign of King Kanishka, who himself became a Sarvastivadin in the 1st century AD. What is interesting is that both the Theravada and the Sarvastivada schools developed their own Abhidharma literature. I am sure you remember the three Pitakas, the oldest Buddhist scriptures written in Pali, the Sutta Pitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. These were strictly followed by the Theravada school. The Sarvastivadins developed their own Tripitakas by translating the Pali texts in Sanskrit. Commentaries have been written on these three Pitakas in which clarifications are done regarding the doctrines and teachings of Buddha. Although there is not much difference in the Sutta and the Vinaya Pitakas in Pali and Sanskrit, but one can notice considerable difference regarding the Abhidhamma Pitaka in the two languages. In all probability, the two traditions worked on Abhidhamma in their own way. And scholars believe that the Sarvastivadins were more interested in philosophy and metaphysics, which is why, neglecting the Vinaya Pitaka, they adopted only the Sutta and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Now, let us see the 7 works on Abhidharma of the Sarvastivada tradition. And they are, number 1, Jnana Prasthana, 2, Dharma Skandha, 3, Samgiti Pariyaya, 4, Pragyapti, 5, Vijnanakaya, 6, Prakarana and 7, Dhatukaya. Of these, the first, Jnana Prasthana, is the most authoritative Abhidharma text in the Sarvastivadin tradition. The Sarvastivada school, in conformity with the Theravada school, emphasized the plurality of elements and claimed that the universe is composed of different elements. Now, it is time to understand the theories of Vaibhāṣikas and the Sautrāntikas, which, like their parent school, are grounded in the discourses of the Buddha. I wish to clarify at this stage one important point of diversion between the Vaibhāṣikas and the Sautrāntikas. The Vaibhāṣikas follow the Abhidharma commentaries. This is evident from their name, because the term for commentary in Sanskrit is Vibhāṣa. And the Sautrāntikas follow the original sutras or aphorisms of Buddha, as the term Sautrāntika literally means those who rely upon the sutras. They claim that the commentaries cannot be regarded as absolutely true, as they are the works of later disciples, and are not the actual words of Buddha. But as I just mentioned, both these schools assert the Sarvastivadin idea pertaining to realism. Sabbam atti, everything exists. The world, its constituent parts, the dharmas have real existence. I also wish to tell you at this point that Vasubandhu is undoubtedly the greatest authority on these two schools. He became a Yogacharan later, but what he wrote in Abhidharma Kosh, which is a well-organized commentary on the 7 Abhidharma works of the Sarvastivadin tradition, holds great importance. So we get to know a lot about the Vaibhāṣika and the Sautrāntika school from this work of Vasubandhu. In this lecture, I will concentrate on the ontology worked out by both the Vaibhāṣikas and the Sautrāntikas. I am taking the two schools together because there is not much difference between them, as both the schools are realists, pluralists as well as nominalists. For both, Kshanikvad holds great importance. But I will also tell you how and why the two schools differ on certain points. The two schools agree that there are ultimate reals. How do we understand this? There is a strategy to know what these ultimate reals are. By ultimate real, they mean something which is one and indivisible. We know that there is a difference between the whole and the parts. The whole is the object itself, while parts are the constituents of the object. Let us explore the 4 possible alternatives available with us, and we see how the two schools reach a solution regarding what these ultimate reals are. So the first alternative is that the whole is real, but the parts are unreal. The second alternative is neither the whole nor the parts are real. The third alternative is that both the whole and the parts are real. And the fourth alternative is that the whole is unreal, the parts alone are real. The first 3 possibilities can easily be disposed of, and I will show you how. Let us start with the first. The wholes are real while the parts are unreal. This implies that the whole, for example, a tree, is real while its parts like the roots, the stem, the branches, the leaves are unreal. But there is a serious difficulty with this view. Now, one thing is a whole with respect to its parts. But what about the garden or the forest of which the tree is a part? Also, what about the city of which the garden or forest is a part? This means what we believe to be a whole is in fact a part of a bigger whole. So this possibility was rejected. The second alternative is neither the wholes nor the parts are real. And this implies nothing is real. This is against the doctrine everything exists, which their parent school handed down to them. Also, there is a big flaw in this possibility, as it is basically talking about metaphysical nihilism. Now, if metaphysical nihilism as a thought is true, then for it to be a thought, it must exist somewhere, which goes against their own claim, and thus nothing exists cannot be sustained. So this too was rejected. Let us now discuss the third alternative, which is both the wholes and the parts are real. Now, for this to be true, both the tree and its parts comprising of the roots, the stem, etc. must be real. This gives rise to a logical problem. What sort of relation is there between the whole and its parts? Is it the relation of identity or of difference? If first, that is, if there is identity relation between the whole and the parts, then what is true of the whole will also be true of the parts. For example, the tree bears fruit is true about a tree. But can we say the same thing about the leaf? No. So, the relation between the whole and the parts is not of identity. Is it the relation of difference then? Let us see. Now, according to this view, the whole is a different reality than the reality of the parts. When the parts come together in a certain relation, then a separate thing, a whole, comes into existence. And this is a new entity altogether, over and above the parts. But how can this entity be proved apart from the parts which it is composed of? When we see a tree, what we see are the different parts of the tree. The stem, the branches, the leaves, which stand together in a certain relation. When we see only a part of a tree, we do not claim to have seen the whole tree. This is because the tree is not in the leaves. Also, it is not sometimes possible to see the whole tree at the same time. What happens then? The mind puts everything together for us, that which even may not be existing. So, this possibility was also rejected. So, what are we left with? The only possible alternative where the whole is unreal and the parts are real. And this is precisely what both the schools advocate. There are ultimate entities which are the basic constituents of reality. They are called dharmas. A dharma is that basic entity which has a svabhava or an intrinsic nature of its own. All material and mental phenomena can be analyzed in terms of dharmas. The wholes, like the tree, the cloth, and the pot, on the other hand, are conceptual fictions. Vasubandhu says, that is a conceptual fiction, the idea of which does not occur when it is divided into parts, like a pot. There is no idea of a pot when it is broken into shards, and that is also to be known as conceptual fiction, the idea of which does not occur when properties are stripped away by the mind. Like water, there is no idea of water where properties such as shape and the like have been excluded by the mind. And with respect to these, the convenient designations being formed through the power of convention, saying that pot and water exist is true, one does not speak a falsehood. This is conventional truth. What is other than this is the ultimate truth, where there is the idea even upon division, as well as upon exclusion of other properties by the mind. That is ultimately real. Like rupa, physical things, even when it is divided up into atoms, and even when the mind takes away properties such as taste and the like, there is still the intrinsic nature, svabhav of rupa. Feeling, etc., should be seen in the same way, because this exists in the highest sense. It is called ultimately real, as one grasps that by a transcendent cognition or by a subsequent convention, it is ultimate truth. So basically, what these schools wish to convey is that an object, whether a pot or a chariot or a tree, is only a conceptual fiction which acquires existence from its parts. And when on analysis these parts are removed one after another, there does not remain anything. When we analyze a pot, which is nothing but an aggregate of dharmas, what remains of it? Nothing. for there is no such substantial entity holding those dharmas together. Dharma does not disappear on analysis. We arrive at the dharmas when after analysis we get entities which cannot be reduced further. Now what entities are these dharmas? Are these schools referring to the atoms? Because we understand atoms to be indivisible. Yes, they are talking about atoms which are of 4 kinds: earth, water, fire and air. But these atoms must not be confused with substances. I will tell you what these schools mean when they say atoms are not substances. Common sense view is that earth atom is a substance that has the quality of solidity. Likewise, fire atom is a substance that has the quality of heat. This is what these schools deny. For them, earth atom is just a particular occurrence of solidity. The fire atom is just a particular occurrence of heat. There is no proof to support this common sense view of substance supporting the qualities. Can we ever prove that the pot is more than a bundle of qualities of color, sound, texture, solidity? The answer that the Vaibhāṣikas and the Sautrāntikas would give is no, because for them pot is nothing more than a conceptual fiction. When the different dharmas get together at the same place, we call that bundle of dharmas a pot or a chariot. Now, it is time to discuss the differences in 2 schools regarding the dharmas which comprise the ontology or metaphysics of the 2 schools. I will first take up the view of the Vaibhāṣikas. The Vaibhāṣikas believe that everything is made up of the ultimate dharmas which exist in all the 3 periods of time, that is, past, present and future. The dharmas are 75 in number and that they are divided under 2 heads, samskrita or conditioned dharmas and asamskrita or unconditioned dharmas. In accordance with the Buddha's theory of momentariness and dependent origination, the Vaibhāṣikas explain the momentary and dependent character of the samskrita dharmas. For them, origination, duration and cessation are separate dharmas. I will try to explain what this means. A pot is a bundle of different dharmas. The red color dharma of the pot originates when the pot is put in fire. The origination dharma then interacts with the red color dharma and enables the red color dharma to interact with other dharmas like the solidity dharma, the shape dharma, etc. Similarly, the duration dharma interacts with the other dharmas and the cessation dharma interacts with dharmas of a different sort, in which probably the red dharma is replaced by some other color dharma. Anyway, the Vaibhāṣikas believe that there are 75 elements or dharmas. Of these 75 elements, 72 are samskrita dharmas which arise and perish. They are categorized into 4 groups. 1. Rupa or form. 2. Chitta or mind. 3. Chitta samprayuktas or mental derivations. And 4. Chitta viprayuktas or forces dissociated from the mind. Now, Rupa includes 11 dharmas comprising of the 5 sense organs, the 5 sense objects and the unmanifested matter. Chitta is the single dharma. Chitta samprayuktas include 46 mental functions like sense perceptions, feelings, memories, etc. And lastly, Chitta viprayuktas include 14 factors dissociated from the mind. These are neither mental nor material. They include factors like words and meanings, unexpressed past cognitions latent in the mind, the four common phenomena visible in the conditioned things, namely origination, duration, decline, and impermanence. Because the Samskrita dharmas produce karmic effects, they form the karmic residues which are transmitted from one life to another. Now coming to the asamskrita or the conditioned, unconditioned dharmas. They are eternal and are 3 in number, and they include: number 1, akasha or space; 2, prati sankhya nirodha or cessation through knowledge; and 3, aprati sankhya nirodha or cessation not through knowledge but through the natural process of the absence of required conditions. The last 2 are the ultimate Buddhist goals. These dharmas, unlike the Samskrita dharmas, are not bound by the causal laws. The Samskrita dharmas are subject to the 18 defilements or kleshas, and once a dharma gets defiled, it corrupts the other dharmas also. For example, greed corrupts intellect or wisdom. The asamskrita dharmas, however, are free from any defilements. The transformation of the conditioned dharmas to unconditioned dharmas is possible through insight. So the dharmas conditioned by ignorance remain attached to the impure dharmas, but when the dharmas suppress these impure dharmas through knowledge and the practice of spiritual as well as ethical discipline, transform to nirvana and aprati sankhya nirodha, and there is no obstruction in space. Now the claim made by the Vaibhāṣikas that the dharmas in their ultimate nature exist in all the periods of time, past, present and future, needs to be understood, because on the one hand they want to stick to Buddha's theory of momentariness, and on the other hand they make the claim that every moment is eternal because past, present and future exist. How can these 2 claims be compromised? Now there are 4 responses regarding this. The first comes from the Vaibhāṣika philosopher Dharmatrata, who believes in bhava-nyathatvavad, which means the entity remains the same in the different moments of time, only the bhava or its nature changes. The second response is by Ghoshaka, who believes in lakshanat nyathatvavad, which means the entity remains the same, only the character changes. The third response is by Vasumitra, who believes in avastha nyathatvavad, which means the entity remains the same, only its state or mode changes. The fourth and the last response come from Buddhadeva, who believes in anyatha nyathatvavad, which means the entity remains the same, only the relations change. So for the Vaibhāṣikas, the dharma in its actual being is phenomena and in its ideal being is noumena. And it exists in the present, which in fact is the meeting point of the past and the future. Now let me move to the ontology of the Sautrāntika school. Their adherence to the doctrine of momentariness in the strictest sense makes their ontology different from the Vaibhāṣikas. They also by implication reject the existence of both the past and the future. According to them, there is no existence after arising. Take the example of a pot. Now when the pot is put into fire, it becomes red. But this red dharma immediately perishes upon coming into existence. All dharmas are momentary. A dharma lives only for a moment. In the next moment, when we see what we see is a new dharma which is just like the previous dharma. And this process of coming into existence and going out of existence is so fast that we mistake to regard the object as existing continuously in all these moments. The going out of existence is spontaneous and does not have a cause. The Sautrāntikas strictly believe in this because for them, the reason for momentariness cannot be that the thing only changes its property or state or form, because such reasons only hint at there being a substance that undergoes these changes. But substance is nothing more than a conceptual fiction. So going out of existence is part of the nature of the existence. And since it is spontaneous, it happens immediately. The Sautrāntikas give reason for why perishing or going out of existence is spontaneous and does not have a cause. Their argument is that if the existent thing ceases to exist due to a cause, then that means there is a cause for the absence of a thing. But absences are not real, and there cannot be a cause which does not have a real effect. So, nothing can be a cause of perishing or going out of existence of an existent thing. Against the existence of past and the future moments, the Sautrāntikas say that if one recognizes the past and the future moments as existent, then how would one differentiate between the present and the past and the future moments? Regarding the dharmas, the Sautrāntikas abandon the notion of swabhav attached to dharmas. Dharmas are unique particulars which are momentary, and in the very moment of their existence they are causally efficacious. The Sautrāntikas reject the existence of the asamskrita or unconditioned dharmas, as these dharmas are not real entities but mere absences. Space or akasha represents an absence of tangible bodies, and nirvana is the negation of passions and adverse psychophysical elements. They also denied the reality of the 14 chitta viprayuktas, or the dissociated factors from the mind, among which origination, duration, decline and impermanence were considered not as entities but as mere denominations of the flux of the dharmas. The number of dharmas for them is 43. Anyway, this much for the ontology of the two systems. We'll see you next time. Thank you.